Mic check. Mic check. Hello. Hello.
How many doors do you want? All of them. Go for it. The shield a little.
Is that good right there?
Yeah. Well, I don't know. He uses that.
Hunter, is that good?
Yeah, that's great. Let's just push this spear this way a little. And then this way.
All right, folks. Welcome to the Hot Shop. Oops, sorry, Aaron.
Good. Oh, you're seeing here. We didn't do anything wrong.
Hello, hello, hello. Can you guys hear me? Can you guys hear me? Hello? So right now what we're doing is we're starting to... Yeah? Yeah? Right now we're starting to warm up our plate here. We're starting to warm up our plate here, folks. Yeah, I can't hear anything. So we're warming up our plate here. We're warming up the mic too. Hold on. Did I turn it the right way? Yeah, it should be good. I mean, yeah. All right, so we're starting to get the... What's that? Yeah, they turned it off just to slowly warm it up. Oh yeah, no, that way it didn't shock any of the murrine coming in. So, oh. All right. Hello, hello. Can you guys hear me?
I don't know what I have to do to make that happen.
No? Hold on.
My body's or something. So that's
Hello, hello, hello. All right. Thanks, Eric. Eric, do you want to... Eric, do you want to run the door? Do you want to run the door? Just for a minute? I'm going to see if I can help them get this open. Hello, hello, hello. Can you guys hear it? Oh, there we go. Oh. Do I need to be closer? All right, so we're starting to warm up our plate here with the murrine on it. Dave has quite a few different pieces of murrine on here, and you can see they're kind of split up a little bit. So what we're trying to do is get the heat to soak into the center right now. That way, as we start squeezing all the murrine together, we get everything to come together nice and clean. One of the tricks with murrine is that as you're warming it up, the plate that we're putting it on, as that heats, it wants to stick a little bit. So if you soak the heat in a little slower, what we're able to do is get everything to cleanly come together. Less residue left on that surface. Dave was talking a little bit about that earlier. So this process is it's a slow buildup in the heat. And as everything starts to warm, then we can start to squeeze it all back together. Let me know if you guys have any questions too. I'll try to just talk as things come about. So if anyone's wondering, it's a ceramic shelf that the Murrine is sitting on. There's actually a little bit of a kiln wash, something that helps it release from the plate. Glass, when it gets hot, it wants to stick to anything else that's hot. So we're trying to avoid the Murrine just melting directly into the plate. So Dave has these nice tools right here that help him kind of squeeze everything together. What we're trying to do is squeeze out the air in between the gaps that exist between the Murrine. You'll notice that he's using the torch as well. When we go into the reheating chamber, the glory hole as it's called, there's burners on the side of the glory hole, and so it's blasting that heat in certain areas more than others. So by using the torch, we can put the heat where it's not getting as directly blasted. Yeah, what's up? Yeah, great question. So the garage where the Murrine, did it come out of the garage? Or the annealer? Yeah. So the oven basically warms it up until it's at more of a stable temperature. Glass is funny because as you heat it, it goes through these periods where it's more likely to crack or break. So we want to warm it up slow. Once it gets to about 950 or 1,000 degrees, it's fairly stable. It's not moving at that temperature though. So what we have to do, basically this type of glass, it starts moving right around 1,400 degrees or so. So once it comes out of the oven, then we bring it into the reheating chamber. The glory hole is about 2,150 on average. I think this one we have it set at 2,200 degrees Fahrenheit. So, but just warming that Murrine up nice and easy. Once again, if you blast too much heat in one area, that's going to start to pool or spread. Also, the chance of it sticking to the plate is much greater. So you can already see it. Yeah, what's up, Rosa?
More or less.
Let's check in on that. Yeah. Oh, that's a great question. So for cutting the Murrine, we have a wet saw. It's kind of like a tile saw. And a lot of times to get a very specific cut, you think of like a table saw at home. You set a gauge there and you run it through. So as Dave mentioned, it comes into like a long tube, kind of like a sushi roll. And then you can cut it to a very specific thickness. You want to cut everything to a very even thickness. If you have different thicknesses, they're going to heat differently. Also, that's going to give you a different thickness when you actually start making your piece. So you have to take that into account. So everything's run through a saw to a very specific thickness. Yeah. Generally, the Murrine does get polished down, at least some. But once you start heating it, that heat alone will help polish it the rest of the way. A lot of times the saws, though, are a little bit rough on the cut. So generally, you will bring it back and put it to a higher grit. So something that will just take a little bit of that sharp edge out of it. Dave, what colors do you have? Purples and blues? Oh, right on. So Dave and I actually worked on this Murrine together a couple months ago. But yeah, we have purples around some white cane, some blues in there as well. I think there was a green too. Was it a green? Yeah.
Wanted them up.
Yep.
And then white cane, purple cane.
With the purple.
Cane.
Yep. Okay, awesome. So yeah, yeah. Hey, Jamie.
When you get asked a question, would you repeat it through the mic?
Yeah. I will repeat the questions as they come about too. Sorry about that. What's up, Ronan? Yeah, so the white that we use, it's a very stiff white. Generally, it's why white? Contrasting. Something to really set off the colors. The colors that we use in this Murrine are transparents. So when you have that opacity in there, it actually helps the color shine through a little bit more. So, yeah, a lot of Murrine, especially when you're layering the colors together, you want something to help separate that. The white is a great option just because it really gives that nice backdrop for the color. Great question. So how does the color affect the amount of heat that puts into the piece? So generally speaking, different colors will heat at different rates. So whites tend to be a very stiff color. They're on the very stiff spectrum. As you go through, generally darker colors are softer. So blues, greens, blacks, for instance, they'll absorb the heat quicker. So they'll start to heat up and move at a faster rate. So the color, and depending on how you sandwich that, that can actually help things more balance out as they're heating as well. So even though we have a stiff color in the center, because we have softer colors around that and clear around that, clear is generally regarded as kind of the middle ground. A lot of people, when they start blowing glass, will start with just working with clear glass. You get a general idea of how things will heat and move. And then as you add colors, you have to take into account how the contrasting colors and the stiff, soft colors will play together. So more or less, if you soak the heat in slower, as you guys are watching happen right now, you can get everything to move fairly evenly. But if you try to just blast the heat in there, you're going to get those softer colors to heat up quicker, and they'll start moving long before the white in this case. Yeah. So now the whole plate has been squeezed together. At this point, the plate is together, but we still need to soak the heat in a little bit more. I'm guessing Dave is looking to get it down to a certain size before actually rolling this up into a bubble form. All the gaps are.
Between where the Murrine touch, it's all got to be going.
So what they're looking for is if there's any gaps in between these Murrines. And so until all those gaps are gone, we're not going to roll it up. It's going to stay as a flat plate. What's up, Kevin?
What's that little piece of metal that keeps hanging on and off?
So that little piece of metal that you guys see on there, that's just a border or a protector to make sure that nothing rolls off the side. So there's a little bit of cane in this pattern as well. Cane is just a long strand of, generally there's colors in between. It's different types of cane. We have more of a fancy cane, if you will, where it's taking multiple strands of glass, putting them together, pulling them, generally twisting as well. So those are what the long strips that you guys see are. You can see Dave flipping the pattern from time to time. That's just to make sure that we're getting an even heat in there. Yeah. So you guys might notice that there's a little strip, it looks like clear on the end. That's actually what's going to be rolled up. So that will attach onto where the blowpipe is. That way we don't lose any of the pattern in the piece. Like the clear piece on the edge there? Exactly, yeah. So question was, is that clear piece what I was talking about? Yes, that clear piece is going to be combined into the pattern. But when we roll it up, we're going to lose a little bit. So therefore, we're just making sure that what we can connect to is not part of the portion of the process that takes a lot of time and color. Yeah, it saves Marini, which is money. So that clear piece is being fit in. So you can see that the clear piece is going to be essentially the length of our roll-up or our sheet. These processes, there's a lot of steps to them. But you can see that when you're building up that heat, there's no breaks. Once you start going on building that heat in, you really want to keep it. You know, once again, the edges are going to tend to absorb a little bit more of that heat in the chamber before the middle does. So as you build the heat in there, you want to keep that. How thick is the Marini? Looks like it's about a 1/4 inch thick. Dave, you cut about 1/4 inch? Yeah. So yeah, it's about a 1/4 inch thick. 6 millimeters, I stand corrected. Yeah. Is that because of our new MC system?
I don't know. We should test it.
Past that step now. Yeah, the O2. There we go. Thanks.
Thanks, Henry.
Yeah. Forgot that it likes to pop out.
Well, I replaced the quick so that he could use his torch.
Yeah, and then his torch got a hole in the line.
Oh, we switched it back.
Yeah, I switched it back.
Why?
There was a hole in the gas line while he was working earlier. He was trying to use it. And then, yeah. So I just grabbed that one of our torches.
Yeah, so I'm wondering if we should just like keep it either, there's two things, either further away from your mouth or if you don't stand so close to the speakers. Either one of those. Yeah, solve it.
I'll try both.
Okay, I'll let you know. I'll let you know.
Okay, sounds good. So Dave is starting to prepare our collar, as we call it. Collar is just a little bit of glass on the end. There's going to be an opening on the end of the blowpipe, though. So it's basically just a gather, as we call it. Every time we go into the furnace and we get a little glass out, it's considered a gather. So it's going to be a gather of glass, and he's going to size it. So there's a tool that we use called pie dividers. And essentially, we can measure it out. It gives us exactly what our radius needs to be. So then we can roll up around that, and it should come in nice and clean.
Have induction ovens ever been explored as a way to keep everything uniformly warm inside? Since you have the issue of I guess trying to keep the piece warm while it's in there.
Yeah, so like a larger oven to kind of bring it all up at the same time.
Like an induction, where you have coil that goes around, so you have a multiple heat source, more uniform rather than having singular heat source.
So the question is, can you use like an induction oven, something that's going to have heat all the way around? I have heard of people that use ovens to actually melt their Marini and squeeze it into these sheets. but it's all just based on whatever equipment you have. So traditionally speaking, this is the method that most people use. Yeah. What's up, Concha? So how do you determine the final pattern before you actually go to pick up the murrine? A lot of it is, yeah, what are you going to turn this piece into? The orientation where you roll it up, that will affect where the murrine actually stays. As Dave mentioned, he usually uses switch access. So we'll roll it up on one portion and then add a blowpipe in the middle. So yeah, definitely the pattern is going to dictate a lot of what the final piece will end up being. So depending on what design you want and what process you go through, that can determine how you're going to actually lay out the pattern. That's a good question. Yeah. I guess it depends. Yeah. So do you determine the form of the vessel first? A lot of times, yes. A lot of times when you go into it, and there's different processes for picking up the murrine. This is what we call a roll-up, so starting with a flat sheet and rolling it up into more of a cylinder form and then closing that down. But there's other methods to pick up the murrine as well, which will give you a different effect. So the pattern, and you guys can see Dave rolling it up right now, so he's got his collar made. And you can see he rolled most of the way around, and that way he can actually make sure to connect the ends so the flat sides come together. He's using a brush right now. I mentioned the kiln wash that we put on the sheets. The pastorelli plates, as we call them. And that kiln wash tends to stick to the glass just a little bit. What's up, Russ? Do you wet the brush? So the brush is actually just like a dry brush. Think of like a straw sort of broom. Yeah, you don't have to wet it, but it just brushes any of that loose dust off of there. You guys can see how Dave connected the ends first. He's going to work his way all the way back to that collar. Exciting stuff. Very exciting. You can see Dave's being very precise with how those edges come together. That will make the pattern in the end much cleaner.
Question for the artist: where we get some massive tweezers?
No, I can't say I have. Although if anyone's gonna have it, it's Eric. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So Dave's using what we call the marver. It's a metal table. It's a steel table. It allows us to roll, cool the glass, but also shape it in the process. So now that the roll-up is complete, now we're trying to make sure that that connection is strong Once he gets that melted in, then we're going to start closing down the end so it's more of a closed bubble. So you guys can see Dave is torching back by the connection on the blowpipe. That connection is not going to get quite as hot as the very end because the first thing that enters is the end into the reheating chamber. The last thing to leave is the end, so that's going to get the most amount of heat. So he's using that torch to make sure he can get enough heat back there to really squeeze out any air gaps that might exist. So Dave's starting to shorten the whole roll up here. That way when we close it down, we don't end up with something that's really far out from the blowpipe. This piece in the end is going to end up being more of a, almost a cylinder. So right now you can see how Andre is marvering over there. He's marvering the tip down so it starts to come more to a point. That way when they go to close it up, it's a much smaller distance they have to close down. You can see there's a lot of communication back and forth as well. Each step, as Dave mentioned earlier, you know, it cools down very quickly. So as you're going through this process, it's very important that you're all on the same page, working on the same piece. Letting people observe.
I like it. I like it. I like not having narration all the time.
Yeah.
It gives everybody a break to like absorb.
Mm-hmm. Yes. That's a great question. So how much does the whole piece, including the blowpipe, weigh? I would put the blowpipe right around 10 pounds. The piece of glass on the end is probably close to another 8, 10 pounds, right in that range. Yeah. So what is the temperature of the torch that he's using compared to the glory hole? And I would say that the torch is probably about 1,500 degrees Fahrenheit. The hot torch that we have right over here, that will burn closer to 3,000 or above. Yeah. So it's more of a spot heating thing. You know, glass absorbs heat. So if you spot heat one area and you go back into the chamber, that will soak the heat in a little bit more. But the glory hole is probably a good 600 degrees hotter. So right now he's using tweezers to pull out the end a little bit. That way he can start to get ready to close that down. Yeah, almost like a flower. Yeah. Yeah, I like it. Yeah, so Dave's pulling that pattern out a little bit to a point. 2 reasons. You won't lose that much of the pattern when he does go to close it. Also, as you can see in some of his examples out there, it comes to a nice, almost a flower-esque center point. So right now the tool he's using, they're called parchovis. It's an Italian tool, Italian name, but essentially it's dowels on the end of a very similar handle style to another tool you'll see him use tonight called jacks. The difference between the parchovis and the jacks will cut a very sharp line. The parchovis are going to be a little bit softer. Am I missing? Oh. Oh yeah. Yeah. Oh, I can do that. Yeah. Yeah. Ah. Oh, good. Okay. All right. Yeah. Okay. I can do that. Ah. Ah. I didn't know that. Cool. I'll be a little softer. Cool. All right. Cool. We'll do that. So all these different torches that Dave is using, they have different heat points, but also some of it is just what's available at that time. So Dave just warmed up the jacks. The jacks are what I mentioned, have the sharper ends to the blades. Put a little beeswax on them so they don't end up sticking to the glass. I mentioned earlier that anything that's hot wants to stick to the glass. So as he's using that tool, the wax is going to make sure that it can stay moving. You can see Dave preheating the tools as well. That's just to ensure that it doesn't cool the glass too quickly. He has more time to do each move then. So the tool he's using right now are called diamond shears. The diamond shears are just going to help close down the end, cut off that end. Now Dave's got some wet newspaper. The wet newspaper is really nice because it can shape to whatever your hand is doing. So you can do much more rounded forms that way. It's also something that we can get really close to the glass too. But as the newspaper burns, it builds a carbon layer on there, which will help protect it from burning all the way through. So you can see he did a quick move with the tweezers, just making sure there's no air gaps. If he's going to start blowing this, if there's any holes, obviously that air won't allow it to inflate the same way.
Seam become less apparent as he blows it out, because like you don't see it in the work, but like right now it's still pretty obvious. The seam or the
Oh, the
connection.
seam?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that just as he's gonna blow it out and shape it, it'll be less visible, or?
So the seam that you guys might see where the murrine came together, Dave, are you going to switch the axis on this?
Yeah, we are. So
Are you doing it right on the connection, like where the murrine came together?
right at that big strip point. So we're going to jack this down right now.
Uh-huh.
Put a clear blather right between where that strip is.
Uh-huh.
Open that up, honey on the other side, and then close it off and fix it front.
Oh, right on. Right on. So that seam, that's not where they're going to switch the axis to, but my guess is it's worked into the design, so that could actually be going around the edge. So it's not going to be on one of the main faces that you see on the piece in the end. As Dave mentioned, he likes to do a lot of the flattened forms, so there's a lot of ways that, depending on the form that you're making, you can hide some of the details of the process, which adds to the mystery of it all. So what they're going to end up doing, though, is starting to put the jack line in, something that we can break it off from. They're going to neck it out a little bit, and by the sounds of it, they're going to break that off onto what we call a punty. So it's kind of a soft connection, something that we can easily snap off in the end. And that way, the punty on the opposite side will allow them to flip the piece around and then close down where the blowpipe is. So for anyone wondering why he's preheating the tools, if the tool is warm, it's not going to absorb as much heat from the glass, which will give you just a little bit more time to work. As you guys can see, we have very short working times, so any extra seconds we get is valuable time.
Making and then using class, because we won't be able to do that for a really long time.
You can always start.
I do want
Best-
to learn roll-ups really bad now.
Best way to get into it is just start trying.
We say that like I'm still struggling to make basic forms of print.
Well, you'll learn new things through it too. And then when you go back to using thread, it's like, oh,
It's so easy.
yeah.
He's doing the reverse access now.
So Dave's getting ready for that reverse access that we were talking about. So Dave just added a little bit of hot glass to the spot that he was torching. That's likely going to be the area that they blow out, and that will be the new connection point, so that way the pattern switches the axis. Do you do that just to get the heat in there so that you can open it up easier? So, just for the collar? Ah, gotcha. So that little bit of extra glass is actually allowing the glass to heat up more, too. So hot glass from the furnace, that's about as hot as we ever get the glass, is right out of the furnace. So by dropping that in, he's now able to use the heat of the glass to penetrate through the murrine and more easily open that up. Plus it gives him a little bit of a clear edge, so as he's making the final piece, he doesn't lose as much of that pattern. So Dave used the tweezers to actually just kind of spread the glass open to create the opening. By doing so, he's less likely to distort that pattern. He's not blowing it out and thinning the glass and causing it to expand. So it keeps more of the integrity of the pattern that you spent time creating. I know. Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, I've done that for other journeys, but I never would have thought to do it with a switch axis.
I want to see how big his collar is.
I know. Yeah, because, so what they're going to do is punny flows down the end, and then add, yeah. Do you go by Dredge or Andre? So Andre is preparing right now what we call a sculpture punny. I mentioned the punny being a connection point, something that we can hold onto the piece. The sculpture punny is going to be able to essentially leave a little bit of glass there, once again, just to avoid the pattern chipping out.
Want to tell us about why he's punting it, not just putting a collar on right now?
That's a good question. So the reason that he's going to put that punny on the other end is it's more, you have a better likelihood to get a clean close on the opposite end. So that way both of the ends of the pattern come together real nice. Theoretically, we could get a new blowpipe and stick it right to the end, but you're going to have a lot less control in closing down the opening.
I don't usually see people putting like a blob of glass on before they tweeze it open either.
Yeah, yeah. So part of that was the that way he has a little bit of clear right up on the collar to attach to. Yeah. Success. Forgot to.
I didn't give up on it, did you?
So I mentioned the different temperatures with the torches and why he might be using one over another. The fluffy torch, as we generally call it, it's going to put a little softer heat in there, so it's a little bit more controllable than blasting it with that high temperature flame. Why do you like the funny as opposed to just going straight to the collar to do that?
Oh, I'm gonna make a blank out of it.
Great question. So why not just put the blowpipe right on the end? So Dave's going to make what we call a blank. As you guys saw, he had that one piece out there. So we're not actually going to turn this into the piece tonight. We have another blank that's ready for us in the oven over there. So right now he's just working on the punny. That way we can break it off, put it away, and he can pick it up at a different time. Exactly. Yep. So that blowpipe will end up going there in the future, but not tonight. So otherwise he would have gone right on with the blowpipe. And for his process, he mentioned earlier taking it into the cold shop to remove that surface, any sort of residue that might be left over from the plate. So if you were to skip that step and just go right into making the piece, you're more likely to get some residue from the kiln wash in there. So he's very careful to work that in so it actually closes nice. Also, so that way the thickness stays more even throughout the piece. If you were to just close that down in one move, you're more likely to end up with thick and thin. So now the rest of the shaping is really just to kind of get it ready for when he were to go and use this in the future. What's up, Wendy? So he's not going to close it anymore at this point. Right now he's just kind of preparing it so then the piece can be picked up, you know, whenever he's ready to actually go and make that into the form. Yes, we have another one hidden in our oven right in the corner. Are there... like for...
Did you roll that?
Yep.
Is that this one?
Yes.
Did that one go in?
No. So this is still that plate that you guys saw. Yep. Nope. Yep. Just two. Yep. Yep. Yeah, generically we call these blanks because it's kind of a blank slate, you know. At this point it's not the finished piece, it's just the pattern. But that way we can do any sort of work we need to in the cold shop. And then once that's prepared, then it can be brought back into the hot shop and finished into its final form. Yeah. We have strange names in here. What's up, Ron? Yeah, we'll get Dave to come back down here to finish the piece. Yeah. Yeah. You can see Dave has a slew of different shears that he's cutting into glass with. I mentioned the diamond shears earlier. Then you have more straight shears, kind of similar to scissors in that sense. It's going to be able to cut more in a long line. But all the different shears, they have their own purposes depending on what you're trying to do in terms of the cutting of the glass. Doing a little fine tuning, folks. So the shape that he's preparing this into is going to make it easier when he actually goes to finish the piece in the future, too. Kind of a large light bulb, if you will.
Keep them hydrated.
That's a good thing. He's sweating, man. You can see we drink a lot of water around here, too. We go through quite a bit of sweat throughout our process, especially this time of year. Awesome. It's totally awesome.
So another day, I will stick a pipe in that. Well, you're about to see what we're gonna do with it. On another day. What's that?
Sometimes I lose that.
So that's how you take murrine after it's made, put it together. Yeah. So it's got blue, green, purple in there as well, some white too. But when we made the murrine together, we took 2 chunks of color for the center. So if you want to think of it like sushi, as he mentioned, also if you've ever seen candy that gets rolled up, stretched out and chopped down, that's another great example of what murrine is. So the center, the core of the murrine was blue and green stacked, so in a long strand. And then we put white cane around that, and then we did a purple and white cane, so purple on the outside of a white core, and then rolled that up 2 times. And so that was the start of the murrine. So the colors in layers. Yeah. Like, how does the
Like if one is different, one is, you know, if you have like a white and a black, you
Yeah.
have the same murrine, and then you put a spike that you put in.
So So does the colors affect how you're actually kind of building the Marini? It affects it when you go into the final shaping generally. That's
Just in how they, right,
how they want to expand. Yeah, so when
matter when you're making it, but in the final it might.
it can matter, but since we're putting it together from building the inside out, a lot of times we put clear around there, and that clear helps kind of keep everything a little tighter. Yeah. And then we pull it. Yeah. And Marini is traditionally pulled straight up and down. Yep. Yeah, whereas cane, which there is cane in here to help form that Marini, that's pulled out very long, so it gets very skinny. Whereas Marini, you tend to want to keep it a little bit wider. And that's how you make a blank. So the next step for our process is going to be actually picking up a different blank, which is in the oven right over here in the corner. And he's going to take a blowpipe and stick it to the opening like what you saw in that last piece. Like this?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's
I think he brought his own torch in. We honestly don't have like true glass torches.
I think they turned up the pressure. Did they not turn up the pressure on the tank?
They could have. They could have. Yeah, probably by request. Right. Yeah. But honestly, the torches that we have are like more of like a traditional weed burner.
I think I brought a few torches in just to see, and it's still not.
It's probably pressure in the tank then. Yeah. But I think the pressure is more set so then it works with the torches back there.
Right.
Not,
Right.
Yeah.
Because
since it's the same line. Yeah.
Which is crazy.
Yeah. But we could have regulators too in each different studio to regulate the pressure down. It's probably a So right now that oven where the other blank is, the one that he had pre-made before coming here, that's now, we're going to flip the blank over, but it's ramping up a little bit in temperature. So I mentioned that about 1,000 degrees is fairly stable. At that temperature, the glass is less likely to crack. It's hot enough to actually stay intact. But it's also not hot enough to start moving. So the form that you just saw, that's essentially what's sitting in our oven right over here. Right on. Wait, did you guys flip it so the...
So we can pick it up on the collar side. So
Okay.
you'll take the collar and shove it in the hole, and then it's going to be pretty much set up.
I thought I put it in that way.
We don't like to do it that way.
Oh.
So like, because we raise it up so hot in the beginning, so sometimes it'll ring one. So we put that one back over.
Eric and I were talking about it earlier. We should have contacted you.
That's fine.
Yeah, Eric was like, no. He was like, I think he likes it like this. I was like, okay.
I can just see you two like talking around the little kiln.
Yeah.
Be like, what do you think?
Oh, we're also in the
This
middle.
looks right, right?
Yeah, this looks right.
we were in the middle of that last roundel that we did too. So it was like, I was trying to do that and
So
then
you
get
got
the.
two rundels then.
We got two.
Nice.
And 2 cane pulls, and we cleaned up on time. I know. Eric was like, you think we can do one more? I was like, no. I was like, we have 10 minutes to clean up.
Why is that a thing?
People just like to push buttons. I don't get it. I'm like the exact opposite. I'm like, oh, that's the rule? Okay. Even Kevin. I had to shut him down yesterday, too. We had like 15 minutes left. He's like, I think I can squeak out 3 more. I was like, no. I was like, we're shutting down. I don't get it, Aaron. Yeah. I was like, So we're turning off the glory hole just to get this blank inside. any sort of rapid heat shock can cause a crack, even though it's at that stable temperature. If it comes up too quick, that could still cause it to want to crack. So Dave just made another collar, so clear glass on the end. It's open so he can blow all the way through. That's going to end up picking up that blank that we have in the oven. Do you measure, or do you just kind of eye it out?
Just eye it.
So Dave's reaching in the oven here. He's going to pick up the blank that we have inside. And right away back into the reheating chamber. Yeah, I know.
You take a piece of soft brick and just wedge it in there. And
I know.
With it, because this is such a pain in the ass.
Oh, yeah.
They fall out
All the time.
And I was explaining that to Erin, and she didn't understand what I was saying.
But
It's
there's
just
no reason to have those.
It's the
those
pressure.
holes.
Wait, we don't use cones.
No.
So, but it's all the pressure of that close pops it out every time. So
Yep.
I wish you saw that. But you're not here. Oh, yes, is there? Did you see that, Erin? The cone pop out? The cone plug pop out? That's exactly what we're talking about. Take a soft brick and just carve it, shove it in.
It's just kind of like what happens though. It's like
No, it's not
it
gonna.
has to happen to you like 50 times and then you're like,
Every
okay,
time. No, it always
maybe I
happens.
should fix this.
We have to.
And then you know you're initiated.
We
You're
need to fix this. We need to make it not fall out anymore. So, talking to Michael, Michael's like, why don't I put a strap across it with screws or something? I'm like, no, that's not the right solution.
No,
Just a soft brick. Just shove it in there.
Yep.
It's fine. No problem. You just gotta learn to work with it.
We could shove fiber fracks in there.
No, just a soft brick. Take a soft brick, carve it a little bit, shove it in. Yeah.
John, I think we just have to do it.
What?
I think we just have to do it.
I think we probably just have to do it one
Yeah.
day.
Yeah.
I think that's basically what she's telling us subtly. It's like a.
That's what I got from
I
that.
think
Yeah.
that was that reaction.
Yeah. Yeah, the
I'll
bigger
accept the challenge.
the bigger fish to fry reaction. Yeah.
That basically what that was.
Thank you. So now that Dave has the blank on there, he's using that wet newspaper again to help shape it up. You guys do one gather on top? Two? Sorry about the ring. Eric and I were the ring.
What ring?
That we put it on
Oh, no
earlier.
sweat. No
Yeah.
sweat. Easy.
Eric and I were talking about it, and then we were right in the middle of a piece, so we didn't contact you about it.
Are you good? All liquids? You? I'm gonna ask them right now. Very cool.
The thickness of those, the image you have for Eric's work, the thickness of David's.
Like, is that how thick that we've been making it?
No, how thick you should have, he should. Like the ideally that we were talking about the other day.
Yeah. Today, the pieces that we made, we kept them a little bit thicker. We got more glass on top and just spun them out to the same size. Seemed to work great. And, yeah. But we did the setup a little bit different too.
That
So
it looked nicer.
kept it smaller and kept the thickness on the rim. So when we spun it, that got the size when it came out of the chamber. So we could soak the heat in a lot more too. So it wasn't like maxing it out and then trying to spin.
You had more time to decide what.
Yeah, and more time to stay in there too. It wasn't like it got hot and started to go. It was like it started to go and we almost let it go all the way and then came out, spun hard. Yeah, it worked great. So you guys can see the blank coming around right now. Still technically a blank at this point. Picked up on a collar though. So at this point in time, they're getting ready, letting it cool down. The shape is right to start gathering on top. And it sounds like they're going to be doing 2 gathers, so going into the furnace 2 times to get a really nice, thick, clear layer on top of that piece. Beautiful piece. So when this piece went into the oven earlier, it was almost had a frosted finish on it because of the cold working that was done. But you can see how just using the heat melts that surface and it smooths it all out into more of a polished glass. As you can see, there's a lot of parts or components to this process, so anything that you can cut out or reduce down time. So for instance, when he's doing the cold working, rather than bringing it all the way up to a polish, knowing that it's going to be brought back in here and can be melted down and smoothed out, you can save a lot of time in certain parts of the entire process.
Our gather.
All right, watch how he gathers. See, watch how he comes out. All right. A very large gather there. What he's doing is allowing some of the glass to strip off or fall back off the piece. Essentially, it gives him a more even gather. Also, you can see how some of that clear has started to move down. Even though the glass coming out looks orange, it is clear glass. Oh, a little bit more water in there? Might need more water in that bucket. Yeah. So now Dave is using that wet newspaper to move around that clear layer. Right when you take the gather, you have time to actually move the glass around. So if there's any areas that need to be evened out, as well as just in general getting a more even shape. So as we continue throughout the process, the form has even wall thickness, allowing everything to expand more controlled. So now that fresh gather is starting to cool down. Dave has it shaped up. What you see Andre using over here is a pipe cooler. Obviously the metal is going to start heating every time we put it into a hot chamber. So just using that pipe cooler so we can grab up as high as possible. As this piece gets larger, obviously it's going to get heavier too. So the closer we can get to the piece, the more controlled we have throughout the process. So each time he goes in to take a gather too, there's only so much glass we can put on there. So that's the reason that things get built up over time as opposed to just trying to go in and do one single gather. Depending on how thick you want it, or depending on where you need the clear glass to be too, you can take multiple gathers to make sure that moves into the right area on the piece. Service around here. So Dave's waiting right now for the right temperature to take a gather. If you go in when it's too hot, that fresh glass once again is going to absorb into our piece. It's going to start moving faster. Mikey. So Dave's taking the final gather right now on the piece.
Really glad you have more water.
So that right there, folks, is a strip gather. You can see how the pattern right now is suspended in that clear glass. So you guys might have mentioned or noticed out there, his pieces have a very thick, clear base to them. So you can see how most of that clear glass is already moved down in the form. So there was a bubble in the gather. Dave just removed the bubble that was right at the surface of that last gather. Eric, I can't believe we put a bubble in there earlier today. So now that the clear glass has been built up, at this point it's really going into soaking in the heat into the glass, starting to shape up the form. So Dave's working hard at really moving that clear glass the rest of the way down, whatever he needs to actually form the base of the piece. You can see so sometimes he's using that compressed air as just to blast air onto one section to help cool that faster. Same idea as when we use the torch. And these are compounding things too. So when you torch a certain area and go back in, that area is going to start absorbing heat quicker. If you start blasting air or cooling one area, that area is going to stay cooler than the rest. And as we like to say around here, heat is movement. So depending on where you need the glass to move, that's where you're trying to either take heat out or put heat in. So now Dave's going to start using that marver again, the metal table over in the corner. It's going to help cool the glass. It's going to help shape the glass. You guys can see that it's very much a dance between both the gaffer, the person who's making the piece, and the assistants. So lots of communication to make sure everyone's on the same page with what's going to happen or needs to happen next. So the metal table is very good at sucking heat from the glass. As you can see, it's about an inch thick, solid steel. That steel is just going to pull that heat right out of there. So any area he's not touching is going to stay a little bit warmer. Combining that with the air, the blasted air on the bottom too, he can really make sure that one area is not too hot. A lot of this is physics. So the shape that we make the piece, that can help retain the integrity and the form, also in this case the pattern. So some people were asking about the weight of the piece too. Well, it's hot, it's exponentially heavier because you have this gravitational pull, a liquid moving at the end of the pipe too. So in this stage, the piece is the heaviest, or it feels the heaviest. Do you pick anything up with how he was getting the clear to the bottom?
Yeah.
I mean, 2 gathers.
2 gathers, a lot of gathers, yeah.
And by doing that strip gather too, you let the glass really flow all the way to the bottom. A lot of times we get it caught on the shoulder, you know?
Yeah.
So.
We also
Exciting. Crazy. Yeah.
Did you clock in?
What's that?
Clock in.
Oh, no, not yet. Sorry.
You don't have to do it now, but
I don't have my phone on me.
no, whenever.
Sam has my phone.
Whenever.
Yeah, I will.
Do you need a shield?
Right now Dave's working in the jack line. This is actually where the piece is going to break off in the blowpipe when we get there. So when he goes to blow the piece, you can see the piece expands pretty quick. We spent a lot of time soaking that heat in, cooling certain areas. Once you get the heat right, a lot of it, the volume of the piece has to be blown out in very rapid order. So right now they're going to start working on squishing the piece. So right now it's a round form. It looks like this piece of wood is covered with a cork. The cork is just going to allow the glass to not pick up any chill marks. If you go directly onto the metal table, it can give these little ripples in the glass because it's cooling it so quick. And so to avoid that, by going over the cork here, you're going to have a much smoother finish on the surface. Yeah, so if you guys notice, Andre has his hand all the way back, keeping the end capped. So by keeping that air pressure in there as he's flattening it, there's no air loss. So the piece doesn't actually shrink, it stays the same size, it's just the volume goes outwards. So Dave's now switching to using handheld cork paddles. It's going to give him a little bit more control in terms of where he's actually putting the pressure to squish it. You'll notice Andre's going to keep his finger on the end though, once again keeping that air pressure inside. You guys might notice too that each stage of the process is very rapid. You know, once again, we took the time early on to soak that heat in, get the heat down to the core of the glass. So if you spend too much time on each step, you're going to lose that core heat, and trying to build that back up is very difficult to impossible at times. It's one of the interesting parts about the glass blowing process too. Certain stages that are very slow, other stages that happen extremely rapid. What about there?
The air.
Down here?
I was just gonna spray some of the smoke out of my audience's face.
I think it creates a nice ambiance.
I mean, wood, not burning cord. It's like wood.
It's polarizing.
Treg and I were doing something recently, and right after he corked it, he was like, I feel like I just smoked an entire pack of cigarettes.
Like some people use water to avoid it, but that doesn't help. It just cracks your piece, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't absorb the water of the cork either.
Yep. Two nice corks, though. The size of them is awesome.
Yeah, you need that.
Yeah.
Flat.
Well, especially if you want everything to be squished at the same time. Yeah, nice ambiance in here with the cork burning.
Romantic home smell.
Yeah, look at up there. Smoky. You guys might notice too that they're not doing a lot of talking in certain stages. Most of the time when you're working with someone for a while, you get really dialed in with what they need at certain points. Or you just make the right guess at the right time. Elongated. So now Dave's going to work on heating that bubble up and actually stretching the form out to get the height. One of the reasons he didn't actually stretch that form out early on is the longer the piece is, the more difficult it is to control, especially as you're trying to turn. So by squishing it when it's a little bit squatter, then stretching it, you still have that squished form, but you have more control over the pull. And also it becomes a lot easier because after they stretch it out, they're not going to be working quite as hot. Or when I say hot, I mean the movement. There's not going to be as much movement in the form. He's got a backup. He's got a backup. So you guys might be wondering why Dave is swinging the form. The force that's created by swinging will actually help pull the glass a little bit quicker. Even though these pieces get extremely heavy, a lot of it is just learning how to work or move with the glass. So you might notice how Dave actually pulls the piece close to his body, keeping that center of gravity close to him. Put the foot up. Towards the bottom and work that.
So we're just going to push the bottom and push it down and turn it into a foot. Yeah, funny up.
So right now they're working the heat into the very bottom. They're going to squish that to create the form that you've seen out there in the feet or the base. Andre's keeping a flame on what we call the moil. It's the glass that's actually on the blowpipe. If that starts to break or crack, that will spread down the piece. Yeah, the gas.
Roughly like that? Yeah?
Yeah, just so it's super oxygen rich. Yeah, any gassy flame causes the yellowing in the boma.
Okay, thanks. I think I may have got one. I don't know if I'll know.
A little bit. I mean, if you blast it again, it's hurt. Plasma and boma, yeah, it's just a but boma burns so easily. It's too gassy. The yellows, yeah, it's like the only glass I've ever worked with that does that. Yeah. looks a little bit better, not much. Yeah, I just turned it up.
Come on, dude.
Yeah. You gotta like blast the fucking oxygen.
Yeah, I think it's just not used to it, or else you probably would have just turned that shit up.
So there's different types of glasses that we use too. The glass that we have here at BAGI is called Boma. So it's a glass that's made in the Czech Republic, the clear glass that we get. What Dave's used to working with is called Glasma. And even though they're both technically a soda lime or a soft glass, they move differently, they heat differently. So our glass is a little stiffer than what he's used to. Also, the reason I helped adjust the torch, if it's too gassy, it actually causes the glass to go a little yellow. It burns it some. So now they got the base done. What they're going to do is get ready with a punty so they can actually attach to the bottom. And then that way they can break it off the blowpipe and finish it on the other end. Oh, I was so worried. Just try not to like.
Cold core sculpture.
You quench or just barber?
I actually feed that strip line.
So Andre's preparing the punny right now. This is a sculpture punny, but it has a cold core to it, meaning that he just got a little bit of glass on the end, shaped it up. He's going to quench it in some water to really cool it down, and then put another layer of glass over the top.